Discovering life's true joy. The night was still, with the summer air warm against their skin. The cousins sat in the backyard, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. The tall oak tree, with its gnarled branches and ancient wisdom, cast a faint shadow over the grass where they had gathered. It was a tradition for them. Whenever the cousins came together during the summer, they would sit outside after dinner and talk about everything and nothing. This time, the conversation had taken a more philosophical turn. "I think happiness is in childhood," said Emily, the youngest of the group at 16. She leaned back on her hands, staring up at the sky as if searching for answers among the stars. "When you're a kid, everything is simple. No responsibilities, no worries. Just fun and freedom." Her older brother, Lucas, who was 19 and newly out of high school, shook his head. "No way. Happiness isn't in childhood. Sure, it's fun, but you're just clueless. You don't even know what life is really about yet. The real happiness comes later, like when you're in your 20s. You're independent, you can do what you want, make your own decisions." A breeze rustled through the leaves of the oak tree, making a soft, whispering sound. The moon, full and radiant, illuminated their faces as they continued their debate. "Independence isn't happiness," countered Sarah, their cousin who was in her mid-20s. She had recently started her first real job and was trying to find her footing in the adult world. "In your 20s, sure, you're independent, but you're also stressed out all the time. Trying to figure out your career, pay rent, maybe find someone to be with. It's just stressful. Happiness, I think, is in your 30s. When you've figured things out more, when you're settled." Emily frowned. "But isn't that when life starts getting boring? Like, you've already done all the exciting stuff." Sarah laughed. "That's what people say, but I don't think that's true. I mean, you have a lot more stability in your 30s. You know who you are by then, mostly. I think happiness is about feeling secure in your life." Lucas stretched his legs out in front of him, his voice thoughtful. "But isn't that just trading one kind of stress for another? I get that you're more stable, but what about the excitement of discovering things? When you're in your 20s, you don't have it all figured out, sure, but you're free to explore. Isn't that worth something?" The conversation paused for a moment as the cousins reflected on what had been said. The backyard, with its well-kept garden beds and the faint chirping of crickets, seemed almost magical in the moonlight. "I don't know," Emily said softly, breaking the silence. "I don't think you need to be in any particular phase to be happy. I think it's about how you see things. Like, sometimes I'm really happy just being here with you guys, and that's now. Maybe happiness is in the present, whatever that is for you." Lucas looked at her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "That's actually pretty deep for you, Em." She stuck out her tongue at him but smiled afterward. "I'm serious. Like, yeah, childhood is fun, and being an adult is scary and exciting, but why can't we be happy right now, with whatever we have?" Sarah nodded slowly. "That's actually something I've been thinking about too. We keep talking about happiness like it's this thing you achieve, but maybe it's more like a choice." The cousins sat quietly for a while, the only sounds being the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional distant bark of a neighborhood dog. Lucas broke the silence. "Okay, but if we're talking about phases of life, then when do you think people are happiest? Like, on average? Childhood? Young adulthood? Middle age?" Before anyone could answer, a deep voice cut through the air. "I see you all are having a serious conversation tonight," said Grandpa Chris, emerging from the house with a soft smile on his face. His silver hair glistened in the moonlight, and though he moved slowly, there was a grace in his steps that came from a lifetime of experience. The cousins all turned to look at him, their expressions lighting up. Grandpa Chris had always been a wellspring of wisdom and stories, and they loved having him join their discussions. "Hi, Grandpa," Emily said, patting the grass beside her. "We were just talking about happiness. Do you think there's a specific phase of life where people are happiest?" Grandpa Chris chuckled, Happiness. And you young ones seem to have jumped right into the heart of it. I've lived a long time, and I've seen many phases of life. Each one has its joys and its pains. But if you're asking me when the real happiness of life is, well, that's a tricky question." The cousins leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. You see, when I was a child, much like you, I thought happiness was all about having fun and playing. Life was simple, and I didn't have to worry about much. But as I grew older, I realized that childhood happiness is a kind of innocence, a joy that comes from not knowing the complexities of life. He turned to Lucas. When I was your age, I believed, like you, that happiness was in freedom. Being able to make my own choices, to set my own path, that was exhilarating. But with that freedom came challenges, responsibilities I hadn't anticipated. It was a time of discovery, yes, but also uncertainty. Then, he shifted his gaze to Sarah. And in my 30s, like you're approaching, Sarah, I found a different kind of happiness. It was a time when I began to understand myself better, when I started a family, built a career. There was comfort in stability, but also the weight of ensuring that the life I was building was a good one. That happiness was tied to a sense of accomplishment, but also a constant striving. He leaned back, his eyes closing for a moment as if recalling memories long past. Now, in my old age, I look back at all those phases with a kind of fondness. But the happiness I feel now is different. It's quieter, more reflective. I no longer need to strive or prove anything. I've come to realize that happiness isn't something you find in any particular phase of life. The cousins looked at each other, puzzled. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Grandpa Chris smiled gently. Happiness isn't about whether you're a child, an adult, or an old person. It's about how you live each of those phases. Each stage of life has its own unique beauty, its own challenges, and its own joy. The real happiness of life lies in understanding that no phase is inherently better than another. It's about appreciating the moments you have, in whatever stage you're in. He looked at them all, his eyes soft and kind. In childhood, happiness is in the freedom to play and dream. In young adulthood, it's in the thrill of discovery and the adventure of independence. In middle age, it's in the comfort of stability and the satisfaction of building something lasting. And in old age, happiness is in the memories, in the wisdom gained, and in the peace of knowing you've lived a full life. The cousins sat in thoughtful silence for a while, letting their grandfather's words sink in. The night seemed to hold its breath with them, the moon casting a silvery glow over the backyard, as if it too were contemplating the wisdom shared. So, Emily said quietly, there's no one phase that's the happiest? Grandpa Chris shook his head. No, my dear. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at, nor is it tied to any one time in your life. It's something you carry with you, through all the phases. The key is to recognize it, to appreciate the joys and the challenges of each moment. Lucas nodded slowly. I guess we've been looking at it all wrong. We've been thinking that there's a perfect time when everything will just click, and we'll be happy. But maybe that's not how it works. Grandpa Chris smiled. Exactly. Life is always changing, and so are you. The trick is to find happiness in the change, to embrace the present, as Emily so wisely said earlier. Each phase of life brings something new, something valuable. If you spend too much time wishing you were in another phase, you'll miss the happiness that's right in front of you. The cousins looked at each other, their faces reflecting the moonlight, and something deeper, a new understanding of life's complexities and joys. They realized that while they had each been focusing on different stages, their grandfather had shown them that life wasn't about choosing one phase over another. It was about living fully in each phase, embracing the good and the bad, and finding happiness in the journey itself.